Hello and welcome to another tonalist landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and welcome as well to day 14 of the Mastering George Inness series. The study after George I'm bringing you today is called Landscape with Trees and Afterglow. He painted it in 1891, and my painting is a 9 by 12. I believe his original was an 18 by 24, so double. I went half scale, quarter scale, quarter scale. So good news, bad news on this. The bad news is this particular painting of George's is not in his catalog resin. I went through it. I spent about an hour going through it just to make sure. It is signed and dated, and after quite a lot of work on the internet, I was able to find the image on Mutual Art, which may be where I got the original image anyway. And because I'm not registered, I'm not paying for Mutual Art, all I can tell is that it had a provenance and that it was sold, but they won't tell me the amount, and honestly, I really don't care. So it's all good. I was at one point not sure if it was actually an image by George Inness, maybe a forgery or who knows what, but it definitely has all the hallmarks of his late period style. So quite interesting to paint this, and I think you'll enjoy how watching me get this sky going. And now one thing is on this tree that you see me working on now. By the way, I'm painting on a bit of hardboard. It's been prepped with 2 layers of transparent gesso. That's why it looks like there's nothing on it. I'm painting my drawing / underpainting stage with it's a mixture of my own devising. Actually, it's a bit of Mars black, raw umber, and brown umber, and the reason for that, instead of just say going with straight up like raw umber or just raw umber and ivory black, was I need to make sure it would be dry several days after doing this session so that I could do the color. And as always, I had an intention of doing that earlier in the week than I was able to. So I basically painted this yesterday, which was Saturday over here. Today is Sunday, July 3rd. Yeah. So lots of greens in this, and lots of different strategies for greens. So what we'll do is, the good news, by the way, was that we're going to be able to go a little deeper into the chapter on George Inness in A History of Landscape of Tonalist. Let's get it right. History of American Tonalism, 1880 to 1920. By David A. Cleveland. Excellent book. I highly recommend you pick up if you like this type of art. It's an amazing book, and I like to promote it at every chance because it's now in its 3rd printing. There have been times, say when that first printing ran out, where the price of the book got up around $400 to $500 in some cases because there just weren't any around, and I felt pretty bad because back in the day I was recommending it to people and they're like, oh, we can't get it, we don't have that kind of money. So now there will be a live version of this in the members area. It's about 4 hours long. I have to work pretty hard, I don't mind saying, on these Inness studies, a bit harder than I have to work on my own stuff because I'm trying to get some accuracy going, although I don't get into the weeds with that, and that's something I talk about a bit in the membership area in the live session, where you gotta, there's trade-offs. If you get too tight with a study, you're gonna see that it gets too stiff and it ceases to resemble like the master's work, even if you put every little thing in every little spot where you thought it should be, because George didn't paint it like that. He had it fairly loose, and not so loose it's falling apart, but there was definitely loose expressive brushwork and brush handling in his piece. Yeah. On the sky, it went together okay, kind of an interesting, by the way, the colors that seem to be blue mostly are gray. There's one spot where I brought in a tiny bit of blue, down in that lower bit in the middle of the sky, middle bottom of the sky on our right. I brought in a little blue there. But it was real fun to paint the sky. Great the way he's pivoting off of the oranges and the creams and the bluish tones. And one thing I did change is that you see that little land mass behind those sort of kind of odd trees over the stream. He had that as a hillock, and I flattened that out a bit. It's just something that annoys me, so I didn't do it. And that's something I point out in the members area as well. It's like, if there's something in the master study you really don't like, then you don't have to do it, and I don't. It is really, at the end of the day, my painting. It's my painting that's been created and inspired by George. And as I say, I actually have to work a bit harder to do a study. But I will also say that it's really improved my work immensely. So now, corresponding to this video and the membership video is a blog post on my site, and you can find a link to that below. That has my reference image for that I used to make this painting. So if you feel like making your own study after this, you don't have to hunt the internet. In fact, this image is hard to find on the internet. I know, because I was really looking for more information about it. Yeah, which we won't be providing you. So other things, just the darks I went in with kind of a thinned black, but it wasn't straight up black. It was actually black mixed with a bit of quite a lot of burr number, because I didn't want it to just be too black. It was obvious in his painting that there was some dark areas, but they weren't super high contrast, and that's of course going off the image I have. You can see from one master painting to the next, different photos, different monitors, different setups. It's hard to tell exactly what the original painting might look like, and it requires a bit of imagination and certainly some industry, of course, to pull off this study. So let's go and jump into this book. We're on page 47, and we're right here. It says Inness, the Middle Years, 1867 to 78. This is written by David A. Cleveland. The middle years of Inness's career, from the time the artist left Ingleswood in 1867 until he finally settled in Montclair, New Jersey in 1878, where he retained a home and studio until the end of his life, were peripatetic. That's a word we need to look up. Years of travel and constant evolution and adaptation to new circumstances and market realities. In the late 1860s, the influence of William Page's tonal theories remained a telling presence in Inness's scenes of the Catskills, in which he painted thin washes of color over color to obtain a lush tonal balance. And now, that's another thing I wanted to point out. There are some areas, like in the greens here, where I felt I was going in thicker than he was, a lot of times to get certain effects, you do need to go a bit thinner, and lay thinner over thin, as opposed to, slapping down that paint nice and thick, which is, I like to go fairly thick with the paint, and I'll tell you why. You may not know, but, oil paint, as wonderful as it is, will go more translucent over time, so you don't want to work too thin, because what will happen is you'll see a lot of that board color coming through, maybe more than you intended. Yes. Anyway, later in Italy and France, his experiments with sumptuous color-laden tonalities continued to yield pictures of rare beauty. And again in 1875, upon his return to Medfield, his enthusiasm for expressive and rich tonality produced some of the early masterworks of his emerging synthetic style, especially his painting of New Hampshire. Market realities his paintings of New Hampshire. Market realities always weighed in the balance with his creative drives. Many of Inness's Italian scenes were produced on demand for the artist's Boston dealers. Populated with peasants and depicting well-known tourist haunts, they were the pot boilers that infuriated Inness to have to paint as concessions to economic necessity. Some of you may not know what a pot boiler is. A pot boiler is a term from the age of the paperback and the pulp novels, where you basically, you have a plot, it's going to be successful, characters, going to be successful, may not be terribly original, but you're doing it so you have a chicken to put in the pot. you have food to eat. So when an artist is making those sort of concessions, that's referred to as a pot boiler. I know that some people may not know, so I want to explain that because I do think it's an interesting term, and certainly as an artist, it's not a reality that any artist really likes. We all just want to follow our muse and paint the things we want to paint. Anyway, back to the book. Even his more successful landscapes of the early 1870s exhibit a broad, picturesque quality which bows to public taste in terms of the inclusion of anecdotal animal and human figures. Whether used simply to add interest, as Inness often put it, or of notes of color or focal points to give contrast, or break up an overly monotonous tonal harmony. If Inness had a weakness, it was what Mather described as immoderation, a lack of patience, and the tendency to improvise rather than reflect. The lack of a standard model for Inness also perplexed critics and collectors. But immoderation, big page coming up, page 48, excuse me. Immoderation, inconsistency was also his strength. It allowed Inness the latitude to engineer breakthroughs. The exceptional works, the most deeply expressive and progressive in terms of formal concerns, set the benchmarks for the next, even more radical step. As early as 1873, a Boston writer in Appleton's Journal noted a change in Inness's most recent work. Since he went to Rome, he has at times varied his brown undertint with a neutral gray, an entirely negative basis from which he can equally work in cooler or warmer, darker or lighter hues. Interesting. There was a question on the channel about this, so yeah, I had assumed he just usually went for a brown or a reddish brown. Sometimes I like a gray too, although I don't really like a gray if I'm going warm, but I suppose I could. Yeah, pretty happy, by the way, with the job I did on that grass. There's a lot of little things going on, like a little subtle, like water on the grass, and some interesting effects, tree stumps and things like that. And let's read for another minute here. Okay. It may be that Inness was moving away from the Barbizon preference for a brown ground and adopting a more neutral or warmer negative undertone over which cooler overtones could be applied to gain the feeling of atmospheric vibration. The critical innovation of the tonalist as described by Burge Harrison in his book on landscape painting in 1909. According to Samuel Isham in the History of American Painting, Inness's method of painting was to cover the whole canvas with a thin glaze of Indian red, to touch in the main masses of shadow and black, and then work on this foundation, gradually bringing the whole picture forward by constant working over. Inness's tonalist palette was evolving from his days with Page at Eagleswood, enriched with Italian color and further influenced by the experience of European weather, especially the 6 months or so he spent in France beginning in June of 1874, painting at Triat in Normandy. And we'll leave it right there. Not a bad looking painting, if I do say so myself. It's getting... well, it's not getting easier, but this one, I guess maybe more so I'm just making my peace with the how hard I have to work. I really did learn a bit about, he has a nice sense of aerial perspective here. You notice how the landscape behind those little odd trees I'm painting now really does recede to the back. It has a nice sense of space and distance, and of course those payoff colors in the sky. And hey, it's going to be in my store, so if you're getting some value off of all this Inness stuff and you want to help old Uncle Mike out, tip on over there and buy paintings. So several of you have recently, and it helps me almost more than any other way. Other ways, of course, you can help and support my artistic journey, or by becoming a member. That's not a very expensive option, but it's helpful. It all adds up. Even likes, okay, fine. You can click the thumb if it doesn't hurt your mouse hand to do that. But really more so than that, I enjoy comments, and it just makes me feel like I'm not sitting here talking to myself, you know what I mean? Now this is, you're going to see the same bit of the painting slowed down twice, real time. And by the way, the reason I tilt that like that is just so you won't have reflections in the shot that I take for the video there. So, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with this, and hopefully you enjoyed watching me put together. Like I said, to really see how I did it, tip on over to the members area, and you will be there in the throes of battle with me. And painting is awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's not easy, but it's rewarding. And if you have any questions about painting or anything, you can ask them in the comments. You can shoot me an email. Hey, they got like a thank you feature here. You can click on that. I also have a donation button on my side. All these ways. Yeah. Or just keep watching the videos. How about that? Anyway, until I come back with another video, do me a favor, do me a solid. Take good care of yourself, your family, all your loved ones. These are kind of hard times we're in right now, so we all got to kind of pull together, and definitely be patient with people that have views that differ from your own. Until I come back with another video, do me a favor, do me a solid. Take good care of yourself, your family, all your loved ones, and stay out of trouble. God bless you.